Hello and welcome to National Gallery X and Transcendence. Transcendence is the sixth installment of the Art and Flux series at National Gallery X, where we're showing the next generation, or actually current generation of art, and how it's evolving in the future. Tonight, I'd like to welcome our curator, Maja Almena, from Kimatica Studio and Art and Flux. She's one of the founders, along with artists and researchers, Katherine Templar-Lewis, Maja Petric, and Carl Hayden Smith. Tonight's going to be a great program. I think Transcendence is the topic of many paintings at the National Gallery, because it has quite a spiritual background, and for many people, art is a form of the spirit too, or a kind of religion. National Gallery X is a partnership between King's College London and the National Gallery, and we are working with artists and organizations from London, the UK, and all over the world to introduce people to new kinds of art and to look at how the National Gallery can be an enduring source of inspiration for artists and people everywhere. So now I'd like to introduce Maja Almena, who is going to be your guide or your Virgil through this evening of very, very interesting experiences. Over to you, Maja.
Thanks so much, Ali. Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be your host and curator this evening. I'm Maja Almena, director and curator at Art in Flux, as well as director and artist at Kimatica Studio. My practice combines performative experiences, interactivity, the human body, and exploring perception, rituals, embodiment, and the subconscious. I create shows, installations, exhibitions, and workshops. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Select the active speaker mode icon for a most comfortable viewing experience. This session is going to be recorded and a copy will be posted at the National Gallery website. We'll share relevant links in the chat, so do keep an eye out for them. Also, we like to make this event as interactive as possible, so I'd like to welcome you all to ask any questions on the QA box and during the panel discussion at the end of the event too. For those who are new to us, let me briefly introduce you to Art in Flux. It was founded in 2016 in London by the artists Olive Gingrich, Afra Semsa, and myself. It is an artist-led community interest company for artists working at the intersection of art and technology. We have grown from a loose forum of 30 practitioners into a group of over 2,000 plus practicing artists, all working in the media arts. We've also created a platform for media artists to collaborate with institutions, and we have worked with key art institutions and many universities too. I will now hand over to my colleague Olive Gingrich, who will tell you a little bit more about our organization.
Thank you so much, Maria. Good evening. I'm Olive Gingrich. I'm co-founder of Art in Flux, as well as a media artist and a researcher focusing on mixed reality, visual sound, and neuroart in my artistic practice. I'd like to start by sharing some of the activities we host with Art in Flux with you. Our socials provide an intimate and supportive environment for a media arts community, encouraging and facilitating networks and collaborations between artists. Our larger curated talks allow us to bring key themes from the media arts community to the general public. We've partnered with organizations such as the Royal College of Art, Laser London, and Central St. Martin's. Last year, we were honored to confirm National Gallery X as our partner for larger talks events, and recordings of our previous events are available online on the Art in Flux and the National Gallery's website. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Afra Semsa.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Afra. I'm a curator at Art in Flux and co-founder, and also a multimedia artist myself. I have a keen interest in modernism, my Islamic cultural heritage, creating art for all, and advocating for a more sustainable practice are all central themes within my work. So to bring us back to Art in Flux, we also create workshops, and this makes our artistic practices and those of our network accessible to the wider public. And in the last 18 months, we've developed a whole series of new online workshops as well. Since 2018, Art in Flux has curated exhibitions annually. In 2019, we co-curated the Event 2 exhibition, which celebrated 50 years of the Computer Art Society's collection. Last year, our annual exhibition was part of the Ars Electronica Festival, and this year launched with the National Gallery X in March, our latest virtual exhibition, Art in Flux Reclaimed. And this was a space where we showcased underrepresented groups within the media arts, and this was supported by Arts Council England. So I'm now going to hand back over to my colleague Maria Almena, who's curated this evening's programme.
Thank you very much, Afra. I'm very excited to welcome you all to Transcendence, an event exploring the art behind creating transcendental and mystical experiences, how this can be designed, their relevance in our society, the latest technical and scientific research, and their potential to support alternative therapies too. Letting art be an activator for social and emotional transformation through the exploration of these altered state experiences that enhance human interconnectedness. This event is featuring two groundbreaking media art projects by Kimatica Studio and Maja Petric, a research launch, and views from our expert speakers, the creative technology researcher Carl Smith and the neuroscientist Katherine Templar-Lewis. We'll be discussing how we can devise together a future for these type of experiences so they can help our society to recover from the current global isolation and mental health crisis. The term transcendental was coined by Immanuel Kant, meaning that which goes beyond any possible knowledge of human beings. And the writer Emily Esfahani says that transcendence has been a fundamental part of human experience, given its powerful effects on the human psyche. Since the dawn of our species, people have been losing themselves in ritualistic prayer, song, and dance. These experiences reconnect us with the spiritual practices that are so intrinsic to human existence. And viewing spirituality as described by the father of Western psychology, William James, is that what we call connectedness in one's relationship to the world, to the self, and to others. I believe these experiences can help us to be more connected as they facilitate deep introspection, and there are new scientific studies that prove this. There have been many reports about our Western society suffering from a global isolation and disconnection crisis. And transcendence could be the one single most powerful experience to enhance connection. With a decline in religious beliefs and living in a society that has become over-capitalized and under-spiritualized, how can art be a source of new type of spiritual practices in our Western society that can promote these feelings of transcendence and thereby help people to reconnect to themselves and to one another? I'm also very fascinated to explore how art can represent these experiences, as they are often very difficult to describe with words, being more in the emotional realm. Artists seems to be the best equipped to attempt to represent them, but how traditional artists have portrayed them in the past, and how media artists are portraying them now. I selected some of my favorite representations from the National Gallery collection that you can see on the slides. The mystical experiences most represented in the collection are the Assumption of the Virgin Mary and the Crucifixion of Jesus Christ. These two iconic religious scenes represent the most well-known mystical experiences for our Western culture, as religion has always used art as a main medium to communicate these ideas. Maybe because the abstract and emotional language of art seems to be one of the most efficient ways to transmit these complex ideas. The NGA collection has some truly wonderful examples in this subject, and I've selected also some of my favorites that you can see on the slides. Feelings of transcendence can also arise from experiences within the sublime, which has been used as a concept that has inspired many artists, and has also been widely portrayed in the collection. One of our speakers, Maja Petric, she is going to be exploring this concept in the media art context, and she will tell you a little bit more about this later. Also, I would like to mention the iconic artist Alex Ray, who has been creating numerous paintings to represent how to achieve the sublime by connecting with nature and the cosmos since the 70s. Talking to curators from National Gallery, we connected over the idea of altars and how art pieces create a natural altar for the audience to connect with their inner world or God. I particularly like Saint Francis in Meditation by Francisco de Zurbarán, representing the mystical space with such a deep black that it looks like black matter or the void. A concept I have personally explored as an artist with Kimatica in order to represent the subconscious space. I also like to mention about Martyrs by Bill Viola, an incredible permanent installation at St. Paul Church in London, and a great example of a contemporary art altar. Now, I'm very excited to officially launch a research project I've been working on alongside my colleagues from Kimatica Studio, Ben Koppelman and Rami Elganar. We are exploring how to develop methodologies that can combine performance, interactive technology, and the human body to design new multimedia performance art experiences that induce transcendent states. For example, we do know already that transcendence can be induced physically through dance, music, sensory stimulation or deprivation, meditation, and hypnosis. Our research question is not only responding to the global crisis of disconnection and loss of meaning, but also to the psychedelic renaissance. There is renewed scientific interest in psychedelics as a source of new treatments for severe depression, since they promote new connections in the brain. How transcendent art could help to support these important new therapies? We are designing non-drug experiences in order to help the general public engage with the qualities of these experiences while held in a safe artistic space. I truly believe that the breakthroughs in this field will come from therapists and artists working tightly together. We'll be working on this project with Breaking Convention, the leading international conference on psychedelics and consciousness, hosted at Greenwich University, which brings together philosophers, anthropologists, therapists, and artists to explore psychedelics and the psyche for social good. Our vision is to connect and activate art, practitioners, innovators, researchers, and investors to set out a research agenda for building the next generation of transformative experiences that hopefully will redefine the well-being for the next decade. This will include new research through symposia, workshops, and living labs, new collaboration through collectives, partnership, and art residencies, new physical spaces beyond theater, such as digital spaces and experiential retreats. At the heart of our vision, Kimatica wants to consult widely and collaborate with leading practitioners to identify relevant ideas needed to create a transcendent lab and to answer our research question. How can multimedia performance art experiences that combine performance, interactive technology, and the human body be designed to induce feelings of transcendence? I'm also very delighted to be sharing Kimatica's new artworks, Multiverse Divinations. It was created after a period of research supported by Arts Council of England. We explore how to translate our multimedia performances into mixed reality experiences. They are a series of augmented reality ritualistic performances and are an applied case study of our transcendent design ongoing research. It is continued to explore the idea of how to create relevant contemporary rituals that can enhance interconnectedness. At this project, I'm using ritual design as a framework to create this performative series, which is focused on activities that promote connection to the self and an embodiment. I've designed the characters and the scene to represent light and shadow archetypes, exploring collective subconscious and dreamlike states. The AR and 3D real-time interactive visuals have been created to resemble the natural elements, and they react to the movement in real time. I explore the concept of metaverse, working with different layers of realities in order to enhance different levels of perception, combining interconnected metaverse realities to tell our story, offering innovative new ways of experiencing performances. Kimatica's tech director, Nestor Rubio, created an open source and low-cost 360 recording and tracking system that digitalizes a physical performance and scene in real time. The digitalized scene allows us to integrate virtual elements and effects inside the video, opening new possibilities for mixed reality real-time public interactions. You can see on the chat a link to a documentary about the process behind this project if you would like to know more. This piece has been created to have a physical and a virtual life, but both will be interconnected. I'm happy to share this first design proposal to create a physical interactive installation inspired by traditional religious altars. It will have two modes, the performative mode with a pre-recorded ritual performance, and the interactive mode, where the audience can interact with real-time visuals and sound effects. I'm exploring the idea of digital mirrors as a tool for introspection, as I believe they can be a powerful one to reconnect with our inner world through our own image and body movements. We are also launching some NFTs, so audience can create their own virtual altars and use them whenever they feel they need to reconnect. The next generation of this piece will have visuals and sound responding live to live interaction from the audience using EEG sensors. We are now moving from Kimatica's performative practice to the scientific research work of Katherine Templar-Lewis, who is representing Canda's studio. They are collaborating with Kimatica at the Transcendence research project, bringing together neuroscience and performance. Kinda Studio is a female-led creative science studio that translates neuroscience from the labs into creative experience. Let's all welcome to Katherine Templar-Lewis. Thank you.
Hello, 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 and thank you, Maria. Every time I see your work, I'm absolutely blown away. I'm transformed. So it's delightful to be here. So I'm Katherine Templar-Lewis. I'm one half of Kinda Studios, a female-led neuroaesthetic studios. And I'm here to talk a bit about the work we've done with Maria, but also the opportunities for artists and scientists to work together. So a lot of what we do, this is who we are, is actually challenge this quote here. The current usage of the words art and science does not allow them to overlap. They're different aspects of creativity with different goals inhabited by different types of personality. Now, that's something I think was true in the past, but really isn't true anymore. And in fact, I think that collaboration between scientists and artists is actually going to lead to the greatest creativity that we need to face the challenges that we have today. So neuroaesthetics, for those who it's a very new science, don't know, is the science of the aesthetic experience. So we study how sound, art, nature itself impacts brain and the body. What we do at the studio is we connect artists and science labs to explore the aesthetics of human experience, to accelerate, as Maria said, insight out of the labs into the public realm via creative projects. And what's amazing is as we find out more and more about the positive impact of art, we by default discover more and more about the impact on art on well-being at a time when probably we need it the most. And to us, well-being is connection, just like Maria, and it's something we've always sort of had a huge synergy on. Connection to self, others, and the world around us. We have a process we call science-informed design, which simply put is just the fact that we use neuroscience insight with artists to underpin, inspire, and justify artistic choices. We translate science into creative work. And we also, and this is where it gets really exciting, we use neurophysiological equipment to test the impact of the work on our brains and bodies. Our aim is quite simply to help artists push boundaries, to increase the impact of their work, to help arts institutions like the National Gallery and art work harder for the public, and to help show funding bodies the positive impact of art. And also to help scientists explore the aesthetic experience in the real world, in situ, out of the labs, which is something we don't get the chance to do that much. So in short, we're interdisciplinarians who embed neuroscience into the creative projects to maximize the transformative potential of design. Now, we work with artists and musicians, sound composers, designers, and I don't have that much time to show you much of our work, but I want to give you one example. This piece that we're about to see was created with us by Marshmallow Laserfeast, the design studio, and the artist John Hopkins. It was for a research study we were running at Goldsmiths. So it's an immersive film prototype based on the idea that art can reduce anxiety and enhance what's called our interoceptive skills. So that's our ability to sense and understand our body signals, promoting a range of well-being benefits from emotional regulation to greater empathy and others. The piece you're about to see was timed to move to a rhythm of 5 seconds, facilitating what's known as resonance breathing, a slow, calming breath. We tested participants' anxiety and interoception before and after watching the piece for 5 minutes. The results indeed did show a reduction in anxiety. So this data is now going ahead to help neuroscientists themselves, but also the artists and musicians involved to guide their creative process and maximize the impact of further work. And what I'm really here to do today is talk about our role with transcendence. And what we did was to identify aspects of transcendence, aspects that you could identify neurologically in the brain, which could be helped to underpin the sort of creative process, the design choices that Maria made. So we know that scientifically transcendence is this sort of shift in consciousness, a lot of ego, the sort of feeling of connection that can be identified when you look at the brain through things. If you look at that picture there on the right, which is an fMRI scan, by a reduction in what's called the default mode network of the brain, at the front of the brain. It creates a sort of radical change in our state of being, including things like nature-relatedness, ego loss, pro-social behavior, lowering anxiety, and sort of huge empowerment. Now, we know the things that can induce this, the overview effect right there, so seeing the earth from space, epic vistas in nature, psychedelics, as we've mentioned, but also art and performance itself. Our role with Maria was actually to identify these aspects that could underpin the design of her performance. And the first area we explored was ritual, of course. Now, neurologically, we know that ritual activates what's called the basal ganglia, the parts of the brain that influences social, emotional, and action functions. But it can really cultivate group bonding. That's key to rituals, this sort of social cohesion, a group meaning. And actually, you see the release of oxytocin, this chemical in the body that increases trust and empathy with others. So by exploring and embedding evidence-based elements of ritual into the work, we amplified the power of the physical performance, driving increased connection and emotion in the audience. The second area of exploration we looked at together was perception change. So here we focus on the idea that the brain is just a predictive coding model. So our behavior and our decisions are based on our brain sort of predicting what will happen in the future. We base this now on our past experience and socially embedded narratives. What happens if our experiences are limited is that our views become limited. Our world becomes so narrow, and our ability to create change becomes limited as well. And our neuroscience has shown that intense immersive experiences, such as transcendence, can show us radically new perspectives and narratives in a space that is safe to explore. And we enter them in a more open-minded state, and we're more able when we leave them to see the world in a new way. So, of course, this directly impacts our well-being. It creates great emotional resilience, promotes pro-social behavior, connects us to others, which directly leads into well-being, and increases our creativity. So again, we explored this area side by side with Maria to build this as one of the central pillars to the work, to translate this insight into creative choices to enhance the impact of the work. Now, I don't have time for all the other details of how we embedded neurosciences, but the next step to our collaboration is going to be actually to test it, to use neurophysiological equipment to measure the impact of the performance on our brains and nervous systems, a living lab, as Maria mentioned. So we're going to be looking at three central areas. Transcendence as art therapy, so how far the performance provides a forum for what's called aesthetic emotions, a psychologically safe space to explore and process emotions. Transcendence as contemporary ritual, so how far does transcendence create physiological and chemical bonding between the audience members? And transcendence to drive embodiment. So we're going to be measuring how far transcendence helps people feel embodied, so in their own body, which is key to well-being. So I haven't had much time today, but I just want to say sort of we're incredibly excited about this stage, this sort of living lab. For us, it's a perfect example of sort of art-science collaboration that's desperately needed. You know, artists can help take insight out of the lab into the real world. They can explore it creatively, but it can also provide real-world phenomenological data back to scientists, all in all helping us create more impactful pioneering work and artwork that enhances the public well-being. So it's just a huge thank you to all our collaborators and all the audience watching. We're really thrilled to be here at NGX with you all, because this is a journey which for us and hopefully other artists is just starting. I hope I've given you a sort of glimpse of the opportunity that can happen when art and science collide, and how it can just help us understand and elicit transcendence and transformation in the art space.
Thank you, Katherine. I truly get inspired when I see, you know, a scientist like yourself that also understand the creative process, because I think this is how, you know, science and art can really, you know, work together. So from Kant studio scientific approach to Maja Petric, talented female artist and researcher with a PhD on the sublime in new media art. She's a fantastic example of an art practitioner that is pretty much inspired by scientific discovery in her art practice. Maja's work with light and cutting-edge technologies such as artificial intelligence to create immersive installation and dynamic sculpture that evoke the sublime in nature. She will be talking about her art practice and her recently Lumen Art awarded installation, We Are All Made of Light.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Katherine, too. It's beyond inspiring, and I cannot wait to see the manifestations of these collaborations between art and science. In my own work, I'm interested in quite similar topics. I work with visual media as an artist and mostly light, but also cutting-edge technologies such as AI. And I see myself as one of the artists on a quest to enlighten the human experience in the age of technology. Really, I'm interested in how science and technology in the hands of an artist can become vehicles for reaching new emotional terrains, and that we could not really reach without these new forms of expressions. I think that now, as the pace of technology is taking over our lives, the urgency of giving it humanistic dimensions is also becoming more prevalent. And the fast-paced industrial development of technology cultivates a value system that is beneficial to us, such as sharply focused analysis, logic, and reason, but it also comes at a cost of broad and non-linear thinking, intuition, and empathy, which is really essential in facing all these challenges we face as a society. And I believe that new technologies can be used to augment the traditional means that artists have been using so far to generate art. Such expansion of the artistic apparatus allows for new kinds of expressions and experiences, and in turn, the new forms of art can extend our comprehension of the world and what it really means to be alive in this interconnected universe. And this is not a new thing. Artists have been pioneers in innovation throughout the history, and it is what drives the evolution of art. Innovative artists redefine how the art is created, but also how people understand each other and the world that surrounds them. And my own understanding of the world and the phenomenological experience in art has been greatly influenced by the work of Joseph Mallord William Turner that happens to reside at the National Gallery. And his most notable painting, The Snowstorm, steamboat of a harbor's mouth making signals in shallow water, portrays a ship in a distress of the English coast. But instead of realistically reproducing the look of the scene, the painting documents the event of the ship caught in the storm by depicting the experience of witnessing the ship while being in the storm. And in so, the painting not only informs us about what happened to the steamboat during the snowstorm, but it also physically immerses us into the event. I think it is a beautiful and terrifying visual experience that creates an example of the sublime in painting. And another example of expanding the visual experience is Caravaggio's representation of St. Thomas reaching out his hand to touch the Christ. It visually portrays a story that informs us about Thomas poking into Jesus, but it is so visceral that we see with our eyes. Our eyes can feel these powerful images of touch that they translate into a physical sensation on our own flesh. And this imagery has such an effect on me that whenever I see it, I can feel these fingers in my ribs. And this is kind of profound engagement of viewers' body and mind that I'm interested in creating in my own work. Several centuries after Caravaggio and Turner, vision as the highest in the historical hierarchy of senses was slowly making space for other senses and radically expanded the experience. And these are just few examples of the multisensory art and the sublime that we don't have time to go into, but it would be worthwhile to do so. In my own art practice, I use cutting-edge technologies to create these immersive installations. These are just few examples, and also an example of a dynamic sculpture that aim to evoke the sublime in nature. my approach is based on the study of the innate human connection to nature. According to the biophilia hypothesis that was introduced by Edward Wilson, human beings have an innate instinct to connect emotionally with nature. And for me, eliciting nature really allows me to engage people with that innate connection with the environment and other fellow human beings to the degree that one can recognize unity with something greater than oneself in this vast and interconnected universe. In the piece, We Are All Made of Light, I use interactive light, spatial sound, and artificial intelligence to emulate a constellation in which every person becomes one among the stars. And the awe-inspiring beauty of the universe is evoked to reveal connections between us and the rest of the world that often stay hidden in the plain sight. As visitors move through the galaxy of stars, the light is extruded in their shape, leaving light trails of their presence across the starscape. Once visitors leave, their trails of light remain in the constellation and are added to the collection of trails that others have left behind. With every new visit, the number of light trails increases and reflects the growing history of the space, matching the visitors from the past, present, and connecting them in so with future people who will be coming into the space. Each new person visiting the space is immersed in the starscape filled with light that marks the presence of everybody who was part of the piece before. Over time, the exhibiting space becomes an archive of people's presence and record of how all of us are connected to others. It is made to transcend the physical reality and visually immerse visitors with what is significant to them, their own ever essence in this vast and interconnected world. The technological system is driven by AI that I have developed in collaboration with computer scientist Maja, and the system recognizes people in space, detects their bodies, records their silhouettes, and projects them back into space in the shape of stars that are made to continually change form and look and feel based on the rest of the content and activities in space. Just like in nature, the same experience is never repeated. And although I created the piece and I know the technical intricacies that enable the experience, I would find myself moved by the sense of communion with people marked in the starscape. My parents came from Croatia to visit me during the opening of the exhibit. And months after they left, their silhouettes would appear in the constellation. They're somewhat abstract, but recognizable to the people who know the ones that are being projected. And the experience of recognizing them, being connected to them in this unusual time and space would be incredibly moving to me. It would awake this strong bond with them. And it is thanks to AI that such a poetic connection among people was made possible. And it could not have been done otherwise. This is a new kind of experience, the sublime, that I'm interested in exploring through technology-based art.
Thank you, Maja. Such a wonderful, inspiring work. I really hope I will be able to experience it live one day. Now, from the wonderful immersive installation by Maja Petric to the creative technologist and researcher Carl Hayden Smith, who is a long-term collaborator of my research in transcendent design and has worked on many relevant XR projects. Carl is the director of the Learning Technology Research Center and principal researcher fellow at the Institute of Creativity and Technology in Ravensbourne University. His research focuses on the relationship between technology and the human condition. He's going to be talking about several tech art projects that explore transcendent design within their practice. I cannot wait to hear what he's been up to. Let's all welcome Carl Hayden Smith.
Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot. I am going to talk a little bit about transcendence design. What is it, and what is the new media approach to it and transcendence itself? So my summary, what is transcendence design? I think it's a problematic term, primarily because you could argue that we can provide the means to transcendence, but not the subjective experience of transcendence. So transcendence is a form of experience which is arguably beyond this kind of description, and it should not or cannot be designed. So that I'm just throwing that in there. But a key question, how has traditional art portrayed transcendence, and how are contemporary media artists evolving the field? So that's the focus of this short talk. Some key concerns. I'm very much looking at projects that I'm actually involved in that are an aid to imagination. Does it add to your imagination, or does it atrophy it? We need to be careful, in my opinion, not to degrade the role of imagination, i.e. we should not be replacing imagination with computer animation. And also some key ingredients and tools of transcendence design is what I'm going to show. And some key projects. I think we're moving from a content-based model to a context-based model where our perception becomes the key content. So this is actually sitting in front of me right now on my desk, and this is visionary art. This is the traditional art as interface or channel or portal, where we maybe meditate on the piece of art and it transports us. Another piece of visionary art here from Emma Watkinson, again, a piece that I own that for me was a trigger. And it was a trigger because I used it in combination with these other modalities. So I was doing some breath work and also standing on this Shakti mat and firing up my limbic system. And then doing so made me, effectively embody this artwork in a very much more physical and visceral sense than the previous art. So what do we mean by transcendence design? What does it consist of? What is transcendence? And I think that you could say some of the motifs, so experiencing a non-dual state, maybe dissolving your body boundaries, seeing differently, having a new form of perspective, but also the unknown, the shadow side of transcendence. It's not all light and goodness. I think that there's the death drive, which is part of transcendence. And danger, a core part of transcendence, you could argue, is danger. Without real danger, we don't have real art. So what are these tools that are more context engineering tools, more sensory augmentation, that are the new media art forms? So whether it's like electronic taste, where you're augmenting your taste, or changing the way you hear, or changing the way you move, or changing the way you perceive with this insect vision, or, for instance, changing your perception of time, where this artist is disabling you in order to change your perception of time. Or this artist here, Moon Rebus, who's got a prosthetic device that allows her to feel the earth. So she's got a prosthetic that actually vibrates every time there's an earthquake in the world. And so she has a seismic sense. So we can look back to the ancient mystery schools. Alephsis here, you could argue, is an entire architecture that is designed for transcendence. But we don't really know what happened in this context, and we speculate that they went underground into tunnels to have a sensory deprivation and to have maybe some sort of medicine to go over these traits of a transcendence state. So we've created an experience called Seventh Ray, which is very much looking from a mixed reality perspective at the motifs that could have been involved, like an OBE, like becoming a body of light. We're using sound, so using all the modalities to actually test the kinds of things. And it is an initiation, so you have to come and experience it to know what it's all about. So just a couple of other artists that I think are doing this kind of transcendence design. This is Walter, Hugo, and Zeinel, and their amazing experience where they're actually installing. This was actually in a very down and out area in Liverpool, where they installed these incredible jellyfish. So they ripped out the front room of this building and installed this. The whole room became a jellyfish tank, and literally the shutters came up and down at certain times of the day, and everyone was like, "What the hell is this?" It's like, our modern day mystery school. No context, no explanation. The artists were filming all the audience reactions, and it basically enabled this process of exchanging context. So the rich people started to come to the poorest part of town in order to experience this unknown world. And I also really liked the title, which was The Physical Possibility of Inspiring Imagination in the Mind of Somebody Living, which is a bit of a dig at Damien Hirst, the physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living. Another amazing experience that I've been involved with, Sound Self from Robin Arnott. Basically, you lie on a bed and you're experiencing your voice. So you literally speak your voice into the bed, and you sit inside your own voice. The Lucia light, again, working heavily on this project with the makers of this. The Lucia light basically is a neurostimulator, combines a stroboscope and a constant light. It creates wave patterns in the EEG that would usually only appear after several years of meditation practice. And it allows for a transcendental experience as is usually seen only in high performance sport or using entheogens or in near-death experiences. And the other example from Jose Montemayor, my collaborator on the Psychedelic Society, and he's exploring the shadow, he's exploring death as transcendence. And not fearing death. I think we're here to practice death. I think every time we go to sleep, we're practicing death. Isness, another what I would describe as very powerful transcendent experience. And Isness is actually a platform that comes out of David Glowacki's lab, which was in Bristol, and is now, he's a bit of a nomad. He's now in Portugal, taking Isness further on. And basically, Isness is a platform based on a physics engine, as I mentioned, and it's a guided ritual where you're literally becoming light through a mudra. So you've got these special gloves on, and you're connecting the universal consciousness with the individual consciousness. You're connecting and seeing these points of light, and that's all you see in the virtual space. But you've got other people in the space, and you're connected through light. And it's just an incredible experience of stripping away Maja, stripping away the illusion. And at one point, you're actually going into the ground, and you can see a mirror world underneath the ground. During the pandemic, they developed something called IsnessD, or Isness Distributed. And that was, again, an amazing experience of not really needing a physical space, but feeling like you were still in one. And that still, was about stepping inside other people's energy. You suddenly were able to, because there was no physical constraints, you were able to step inside other people's energy and sort of merge your energies, which is very powerful. This is New Modelic Flow, which again was designed using the Isness platform, but it's less ritualized, more free flowing. And you're using controllers instead of gloves. But what's amazing about this is that you actually practice Qigong and breath work, and you're literally sharing your breath with the other, using these buckyballs, Buckminster Fuller balls. You're actually able to like share the space with the other and actually be inside their energy. So that was it from me. I just wanted to finish with my email if anyone wants to contact me. But thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thanks you for the invitation, Maria, and your crew.
Thank you very much, Carl. It's really wonderful to hear from you about other artists and other researchers that are exploring the same subject that I'm passionate about. So for me, I wanted to start to talk about the kind of the social relevance about these transcendental experiences. I think as an artist, I've been researching this field because I believe it's been really beneficial for me personally, and I can see, and I've started to read about research about how beneficial it is for people, and so I wonder, why do you think, these experiences can be beneficial for our society, and how they can contribute to our recovery, our society recover after the pandemic, right? So I'll drop that question for now. Whoever feels more inclined to go and answer, just raise your hand, and then we just go on the flow. Yeah, Katherine, go for it.
Hello. I mean, it's a great question. And obviously, I'm going to answer from a slightly scientific point of view, because the pandemic, the three main sort of what I call the sort of horsemen of the pandemic really were isolation and stress and uncertainty. And when our brains aren't really they're good at dealing with either of those things. And what's happened to us is we've seen anxiety rising, we've seen cognitive overload. And in most societies, other than Western ones, there's a lot of sort of performative ritual, performative dance and art that brings people together. And you see the impact on people's well-being through things like sort of biological markers, through their nervous system, through oxytocin, this chemical that we release that bonds us. And we really lack that. And one of the few places, especially in the absence of sort of nature around us, that we can get that at the moment is through artistic experiences. So I think it's absolutely vital that we bring sort of things like ritual, even if it is through sort of artwork, and make it as accessible as possible right now, because it has a direct link on our well-being, both our mental and physical health.
Fantastic, thank you. I always love science has, it's kind of like proving my intuition, that's quite satisfactory, I have to say. What about, Carl, would you like to maybe add anything on this subject, on this question?
Yeah, actually a really interesting question from Saint Leamoc in the chat. Basically asking, I talked about the Lucia light enabling potentially, to shortcut years of meditation. And I think there's obviously major dangers with that. Like any shortcut, I think that if you're not doing it responsibly, and I think there is such a major mental health crisis now coming out of the pandemic, that people, they have so much choice in terms of these interventions that they take. And I think it is absolutely the case. If you look at the Virtual Awakening piece from Jose, looking at death, it can be very traumatizing to go into something like that. You think it's VR, you think it's harmless, but actually your brain thinks it's real. So I think that to answer your question, there's so much room for this stuff, but I think with a lot of education and understanding.
Fantastic, thank you. Maja, would you like to maybe answer to that? And then, I think we are going to choose a question from the audience.
Yeah, I think art is essential, really, in facing the issues we are in, and because so many of this crises that we are being challenged by now, including the pandemic, climate change, are hard to comprehend. And there is a lot of studies on that too, that our brain can really not relate to the full extent to what is happening. And it has been proven that it's much easier for us to get a sense of what the climate change is if there is a personal story. And I think art in that sense can create narratives that can really help us understand, but then also create these visual narratives, experiences that can transcend the issue and let us focus on solutions, or let us practice those muscles of imagination that Carl was talking about, that can then yield results different from the ones that are bound to the related to the crisis. So I think we need it. It's not just can it do something, like we depend on it, I believe.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I would like to add something that we've been discussing also about how artistic experiences, they provide a safe and exploratory space for people to dive into these, into therapeutic approaches, because then you are almost like approaching therapy from another angle, and I think that's it allows audiences to feel more free and to feel more safe, and to kind of go farther from them. We had a question actually for Katherine. And there's a couple, but then one I want to say from Holly Hewitt: how do you evaluate the impact of a transcendental experience from an artwork? And I think that's something that you started to share about, that how we've been planning about measuring the impact of the art experiences, and how, and maybe I want to add a little hint there, and how maybe measuring the impact, it could really help as a society as a whole too.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. And obviously what's really exciting about this point in neuroscience or neuroaesthetics, which is sort of the neuroscience of the artistic experience, is that until really recently, we've only been able to study things in the lab. And we know that context is absolutely vital to how we experience things. And so we're sort of looking to mix up sort of quantitative data, so actual biological markers. So we'll be looking at EEG brainwaves, so what sort of the brainwaves give off, and we can actually look from that things like different frequencies, things like alpha, which can denote more sort of relaxed or creative states. We're going to look at the nervous system, so you look at that through things like your HRV, your heart rate, your skin conductance, and there's lots of sort of little measures in there that you can look at to see the impact really on your brain and body. And then there's actually qualitative data, which is really important as well. It's actually people's own sort of, behavioral responses, even questionnaires and surveys, and how they respond back to it. And obviously there is so much individual difference. So it's going to be really interesting just to explore that in the real world and see the impact. As you said, and you said it yourself, Maja, which I thought was really important, was that actually science is just putting the mechanisms under what has been your creative intuition, all your life being a creative. And I think maybe that's something I want to sort of open up to the other artists here as well. As a scientist, I want to be led by you guys as to where we just want data from the field. That's great. But where we could add most to your work, because like the intuition does come first.
Fantastic, thank you. Maybe Carl, I know you were working also in a large research project to develop like this wearable to also like to abstract data. Maybe you're gonna tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real trend, isn't it? Gathering biometrics, and I've done it on numerous projects and built wearables containing multiple sensors that enable sensor fusion. So if you're combining galvanic skin response with temperature and a couple of other things, you're able to actually measure effective state. But the point is that if you're going to measure it, it's not necessarily conclusive. And I think that there's dangers around looking at numbers and thinking that you're actually measuring anything like transcendence, that you could be just measuring their internal processes related to their relationship or whatever it is they're struggling with at that time, obviously. So I think that, it's not so much, it's, there's obviously what you can measure, but there's also how do you protect that data? Because I think that there's so much, now people slap on Fitbits or whatever it is, and they don't realize that their effective state is being monitored abroad from them. And, your sovereignty is your consciousness, and if your consciousness is mappable or remotely monitorable, then you're in danger of giving up your privacy of the most important sovereignty that you have.
Yeah, very good point to remember. Very on the edge of data. Actually, Olive Gingrich curated an event around that. So I remember. We have we have lots of questions. Actually, Olive, you gonna maybe share one that you think is more relevant? I'm trying to scan, but it's quite.
There's a lot of questions. One question by Kalina was about the facilitation. What kind of facilitation do you think such a work of art might require that would be accessible for anyone, regardless of how far they are in the spiritual journey? So I think that's a good question also for you.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that one. I think there are, particularly as an artist, I've been developing like two different main art pieces. One that I call Relax and Release is, for me, I call that an entry level that is pretty much just helping people to connect with their bodies. I think that's like an entry level. We as a society that we are like just very over connected with our minds. One of the problems about people feeling disconnected is that they don't know what they're feeling. They don't know what is inside them, And I think we understand those inner processes through our body. I mean, there is no other way. We have to like bring back, like our connection with the body. So for me, like I've created that installation that is more, for entry level, I would say, just when you just need to be connected with your body. Then our transcendent kind of multisensory experience, I will say, it is more for like advanced level, like people that they have already experienced some, spiritual quest, and they have, they are ready to transcend, wherever they know, wherever they are at. So I think in that sense, I do, as an artist, I have been thinking about my audience in terms of like, how to assess who is ready for what. Also, I want to say that that in the last project, I've been researching, what I call virtual rituals, and how some, maybe in terms of accessibility, how to make sure virtual actual experiences, they can offer a lot in terms of accessibility, to make sure everyone can, these experiences can reach to everyone. And now with, like the wild use of internet and screens, you can do that. So I think for me, I'm trying to combine, virtual experiences and physical experiences, just to get the most of them, and again, to facilitate and to offer them to whoever, depending on how people need them. Anyone else would like to add something? Maybe Maja, because you are also you designed your own art installation. Have you been thinking about that?
Well, I just to relate to all of your thoughts here combined. I find it very inspiring and also essential in my work to understand the science in how we perceive phenomenology of our experiences, in order to know how to direct that sensory narrative that I'm trying to craft. And I believe that there is so much more room for science to really contribute, information about how are we operating, how are we absorbing the world around us, and then assigning meaning to it. And yet I agree with Carl that it is also, it's somewhat tricky to quantify that information. But I do believe it's somewhat possible. So maybe baby steps, we do start mapping new understanding of how we are built. But then I think we have a new question as artists, is how can we use that knowledge to then go a step higher, to point at things that could not be articulated with science until then? Because that inherently is the quest of art, I believe, is to point at things that are hard to grasp. And in my work, that's how I approach building works, is like trying to understand, using the very practical knowledge about how we are sensing the world and how we construct meaning, and then also using the artistic craft to lead people into experiences that could not be articulated in other disciplines. I would like to, with this work that I described, would like to go step above and really understand and really find new ways of constructing memories and constructing understanding of our own mortality. And I think that in turn can help us to grasp ourselves differently and act in the world towards others and the environment in maybe a different way.
I'll just add, Maria, that on the question of facilitation, there was also a question that came up from Lini about trust and whether it's an important component in these experiences. Should the participants trust what you are as a designer or as an artist? And absolutely, I think that if you're facilitating somebody, whether it's in a psychedelic experience or whether it's through a cyberdelic experience, there's always the pre-context, i.e. the preparation for the experience. Then you have the experience, and then there's the post-context, which is the integration. And I gave a talk for consciousness hacking, and somebody had an ayahuasca experience, a virtual ayahuasca experience, and they didn't have proper facilitation, and they had proper trauma as if they'd actually done ayahuasca. It was only a digital version of it, but they weren't given those proper, pre and post contexts, and therefore it resulted in trauma. So I think these things are very powerful tools and totally need to be trusted. You need to be trusted. You almost need to be rubber stamped. For having gone through all of that physiological and psychological prep.
Do you think it's because we live in a society that just lives so fast and everything seems to be, okay, now you're doing that experience, now you're doing that, it needs to be, we're almost not used to that, the slow, processes in terms of we know we need to prepare for a deep experience. We need to integrate that deep experience. I think that's something, maybe that clash with the how our modern society, kind of moves, because it's just it's always really, really fast pace.
Yeah. I think it's very much a case of we're just chasing the next altered state rather than thinking about altered traits. How do we have permanent benefit rather than just constantly, it's the Netflix of altered states almost.
Oh my God, I don't want to see that concept to be realized, the Netflix of altered state. Okay, fantastic. I think we have time for 2 more questions. Olive, which one do you think we should answer?
It was really a good question about whether there's the possibility that the measures of the experiment can actually influence the experience. So this was a question to Katherine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question actually, and it is a huge problem. I think what's been really well highlighted in today's discussion is that firstly, sort of science doesn't have all the answers, and it shouldn't do either. And I think, it's not about reducing experiences. If anything, it's about to help sort of bring up more questions and make it more expansive. And if anything, what it's showing is the power of these transformative experiences, neurophysiologically as well as behaviorally. And it is a real problem. And, there's a lot of sort of ways huge sample sizes and control tests and things like that. But one of the reasons why it hasn't really been studied till now is because of the problem of isolating the different factors. So I think, it is an exploration. It is sort of, sometimes you're never going to get the actual answers, but we're working towards understanding how these things are having an impact on us that can inform the creator's work. And I think the real joy of the work that I do is seeing the power. And actually, as Carl said, it's not about data. The data can be really reductive. It's about also talking to people and telling stories and experiencing them and having more of a language around these experiences for our society so they become the norm.
And I think this is when when really scientists and artists will be working tightly together, is scientific research can inform art experiences, but then also those art analyzing and abstracting data, just information about those art experiences can inform the next kind of generation of art of science research. And this is a kind of feedback that I think is very important to do. And somehow I think also technology is a bit the glue that is gluing artists and scientists come together. Okay, so one more. Olive, which one would you choose? I'm seeing just too many.
Combine 2 questions. Yeah, there's a question about whether there's a possibility. How can you assure that transcendental experiences are not just a tool for escapism, but they're also a means for critical reflection? And there's also a question about de-radicalization, which kind of ties in with that, I think. How do you ensure that people are actually really feeling connected and it's not just part of a hype, which could also be instrumentalized in a way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Maja?
Yeah, I can say that what I'm witnessing when people are entering altered states is that they're really entering a suspension of their own ego And that allows them to focus and to focus on what is significant to them. You might call that escaping from the reality, which it is in some way, but also escaping into the place that is very concentrated on what matters and what's meaningful. And I think that is beneficial. One does not have to exclude the other. And it is really when art is successful, that's when it happens. So in my own work, I try to create a sense of sensory deprivation and then sensory theater that can really lead people through this visceral journey that then lets them come back into themselves without all these other distractions that we are dealing with every day. So I think that is the goal, even if it means escaping.
Yeah, and sometimes the thing is like, one thing is escaping from the self, another thing is escaping from the exterior world, so you can actually connect with the self, you know. And I think that's maybe a difference to be shared. Yeah, anyone else would like to touch upon this? Otherwise, I'm tempted to ask the first one, to answer the first one.
I'd just say from my side, I think it's very much about, let's explore the full range of the human experience and the human condition. Let's not focus on just the light. I think we take in the shadow and we embrace the ecstatic, but also the frightening.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think the last question I would like to think about is the contribution of the participant, because obviously all these experiences that we are designing, I mean, they have something that is a common thread, that they are all participatory art experiences, because we design them and create them for the audience. So how, when you are creating an experience for the audience, what do you think are the kind of the key aspects that we, you know, as designers, we should be taking into consideration? So it could be more, fulfilled. You know, it could feel more fulfilled for the audience. What would be your maybe hot kind of tips for this?
I mean, I can go first on that if you want, Maria. And I think for me, it's something that I know resonates with you and probably everyone here, is about connection. Just because all the science that's shown me the power of connecting to ourselves, the power of experiences to connect us back to nature, and what that drives us to do, the stewardship that it drives us to of our planet, and also connection to each other, because the impacts on us, our well-being, and even things like our own problem-solving ability is just so powerful. So I think, you know, transcendence for connection for me is absolutely vital right now.
Fantastic. Yeah, one of the things I'll share within my own practice in terms of also how do you ensure, you know, engagement in a way from the audience is we only use real-time technology as it's one of the things actually that I've learned in one of our conversations, Katherine, that it was live, always when art is live and it's happening in real time, is really engaging. Is much more engaging than any pre-recorded experience, and because that you and the audience know that it is being live, so they are really invited to be in the moment and to be, you know, part of the experience in that moment. So I think that's one of the things that for me has been important, and also to don't forget about, if you are doing a physical experience, to have performer, hostess, people that, you know, help and guide the audience, you know, that they are just there kind of, I always call them guardians, you know, guarding the experience to support the audience. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but it has been really wonderful to hear from all your projects. I hope the audience have also enjoyed to listen to everything. And thank you for everyone that have come here, particularly also to the National Gallery team to support us in this event. Chris Michael, Ali Hussein, Irum Ali, Ian Warren, and also to my Flux colleagues, Afra Semsa and Oliver Gingrich. And very special thanks to all of you, to all the speakers, Maja Petric, Carla Hayden Smith, and Katherine Templar-Lewis for sharing your amazing work. I cannot wait to see what we can, do in the future. I hope everyone has enjoyed the event as much as I had, and that it could be really the beginning to have more open discussions and under the Transcendence experience umbrella, so we can devise together new contemporary art therapies that can have a positive impact in our society. If you're interested in contributing to any of our projects, just get in touch. And I'm going to be handing over to Ali Hussein, who is going to wrap up the event in the name of National Gallery. Thank you.
I'd like to actually refer to Dr. Templar-Lewis's call for fusion of art and science. I think we should have a generalized notion of creativity that transcends the silos that are historical constructs between art and science and these other activities. They're historical constructs and they're relatively recent. So let's just take a moment for reflection on art, science, and spirituality. I mean, we think of them as different or even opposed, but let's recall, we don't have a theory of everything. We don't have anything, even true believers can't really explain everything that happens. So when we try to reduce experience to one discipline, we end up with dogma, which means that no field of knowledge matches the experience. There's no epistemological unity. And that means that we're going to experience things that cannot be explained or can't be explained by a single field. So the message I took from Transcendence is that we should explore every avenue of knowledge, and that for a human being, the meaning of life can be fragmented, and in fact is fragmented. And this fragmentation can be disturbing, but it's also liberating, because it means that we can grasp at all the tools of art, science, and spirituality to give meaning to our own lives. And I think tonight we've seen a demonstration of the range of those tools and the range to which those tools can be used in harmony, and also to integrate the human psyche. So to our viewers, thank you for coming. Next time you visit the National Gallery or look at some of our paintings online, let's reflect on the original context in which they were presented. And just to remind you, I'm Ali Hossaini. I'm a co-director of National Gallery X, which is, I guess, the cutting edge studio wing of National Gallery. And at NGX, we're working to revive the environment that lent the full range of meanings to the paintings in their original context, but we also want to let the paintings evolve with the needs of the present. And that's what our current cohort of artists and creators that we've seen tonight are. So I'd just like to thank Katherine, Maja, Carl, and especially Maria for putting all of this together. It's been a wonderful evening, but I don't have the last word. The last word is going to go to our colleague, Afra Semsa, who's going to tell you about the next Art in Flux National Gallery X event, Radical Ecology.
Thanks so much, Ali, and thank you to everybody. What a fantastic event. So just to drop in a few events that we have coming up, our Shemsa Digital exhibition is launching in a couple of days. Art in Flux held a workshop with Shemsa Digital, which is a project that I'm leading, and we launched it last year at my Shifting Ground event with National Gallery. So do check that out. That's on Thursday night. Art in Flux are taking part at Deep AI Art Fair, which is the first year that that's running, and that's going to be in October, and it will be in person. So do come down and have a chat with us and see the works that we've got on show. And then my Radical Ecology National Gallery X event will be happening on the 23rd of November. And this is where I'm going to be looking at the current climate crisis in relation to media art and the National Gallery's collection. So looking at how the environment inspires media artists. So do come along and share those events with us. Thank you so much this evening. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.